Regular Show gave us some of the best cartoon characters ever, from Mordecai and Rigby's friendship to Benson's anger issues that somehow worked perfectly. But there's one character who stands out for all the wrong reasons, and that's Margaret. She's supposed to be this important love interest, but instead, she becomes the thing that drags down everything around her. In this video, we're talking about why Margaret is the worst thing to happen to Regular Show. Keep watching to see how her return in Season 6 completely destroyed Mordecai's character and ruined the show's best relationships. Be sure to subscribe to our channel before we get started. Margaret is probably the most boring main character in Regular Show history. Think about it. Can you name a single hobby she has? One thing she genuinely enjoys outside of dating? The answer is no, because the writers never bothered to give her any. From her first appearance in Caffeinated Concert Tickets, Margaret exists purely as a prize for Mordecai to chase. She shows up, mentions her boyfriend with that annoying catchphrase routine, "Mordecai, meet my boyfriend," and disappears. That's her entire character for 4 seasons. Even her job at the coffee shop and going to school don't count as personality traits. Those are just plot devices. Compare this to literally any other character. Eileen immediately felt real because she loved astronomy, was into gaming, and had clear intelligence. Muscle Man had his pranks and relationship with Starla. Skips had his mysterious past and wisdom. Even background characters like High Five Ghost had more personality than Margaret. The writers proved they could create compelling female characters, but with Margaret, they just gave up. Throughout Season 2 and 3, Margaret continues being nothing more than a romantic obstacle. In Do Me a Solid, she's literally only there as a favor to Eileen, not because she actually wants to spend time with Mordecai. She cancels her own date to help set up Rigby and Eileen, showing she has no real interest in developing anything meaningful with Mordecai. It's just another version of her boyfriend routine, except now she's physically present, but emotionally absent. The problem gets worse when you realize Margaret appears in dozens of episodes across multiple seasons, but never develops beyond her initial introduction. In Season 1, she appears in Meet Your Maker as just a dream sequence where Mordecai imagines dancing with her. In The Unicorns Have Got to Go, she just walks away when Mordecai tries to impress her. In Mordecai and the Rigbys, she does her boyfriend routine again with some guy named Angel. Even when the writers tried to give Margaret moments to shine, like in Camping Can Be Cool, all we learn is that she wants to quit her job and guys are the worst. That's not character development. That's just basic complaints anyone could have. Margaret never gets a moment where she shows genuine interest, tells a memorable joke, or reveals something unique about her personality that makes her worth caring about. The most frustrating part is how other characters got rich development in the same amount of screen time. Thomas was introduced as a simple intern, but quickly developed his own personality quirks, relationships with other characters, and memorable moments. Margaret had years to become interesting and just never did. She remained as bland in Season 4 as she was in Season 1. Here's what really bothers me about Margaret. Her storylines completely broke what made Regular Show special. The show worked best when it took simple, everyday problems and escalated them into surreal adventures with genuine heart. Mordecai and Rigby would start with something mundane, like returning a videotape, and by the end, they'd be fighting interdimensional beings or time traveling to fix their mistakes. But Margaret's romantic drama never followed this formula. Her storyline stayed grounded in boring relationship problems that had no creative payoff. When was the last time a Margaret episode ended with them fighting a cool monster or going on a wild adventure? Instead, we got episodes about awkward double dates, relationship miscommunications, and will they won't they tension that went nowhere. Think about Regular Show's greatest episodes: Exit 9B, The Christmas Special, Eggcellent, or Regular Show, the movie. These episodes worked because they took relatable emotions and conflicts, then amplified them through increasingly absurd situations until you got genuine catharsis. A simple desire to win a contest becomes a battle against past villains. Wanting to help a friend becomes a space adventure. Margaret's episodes never achieved this escalation. Bad Kiss comes close when Mordecai travels back in time, but even that focuses more on the relationship drama than the creative time travel concepts. Most Margaret episodes end with awkward conversations or relationship status changes rather than the explosive, satisfying conclusions that made regular show legendary. The show's other romantic relationships enhanced this formula perfectly. Muscle Man and Starla were hilarious together, and their relationship led to fun adventures and creative situations. When Muscle Man proposes to Starla, it becomes this huge, elaborate scheme involving the whole park crew. Rigby and Eileen's relationship developed naturally through the show's trademark chaos, like when they had to survive together during crazy park emergencies. Margaret's presence forced regular show into conventional romantic territory that felt completely out of place. Her storylines were neither funny enough to work as comedy nor weird enough to feel like regular show. They just existed in this bland middle ground, taking up time that could have been used for the creative adventures that made the show legendary. The tonal problems became even worse when Margaret's drama started affecting other characters. Instead of getting episodes where the whole park crew went on adventures together, we got relationship triangles and emotional baggage that dragged everyone down. Margaret single-handedly made regular show feel like a generic cartoon about dating instead of the unique creative powerhouse it was supposed to be. Regular show's best episodes made you laugh, gasp, and sometimes cry, all within the span of 11 minutes. Margaret's episodes just made you check the clock to see how much time was left. That's the difference between a character who enhances a show's strengths and one who works against everything that made it special. After 4 seasons of build-up, Margaret's breakup with Mordecai was one of the most poorly timed moments in the entire series. Picture this: they're hiding behind tables during a shootout in a fancy restaurant, bullets flying everywhere, and Mordecai pours his heart out, asking her to be his girlfriend. Her response?
I got into my dream school. I'm sorry, but I can't be your girlfriend.
The timing makes Margaret look absolutely terrible. She just let Mordecai meet her dad, who actually approved of him for the first time ever. They'd spent the entire season building toward this relationship. Mordecai had collected Amadeus dollars by doing favors for everyone at the park, planned the perfect date, and was ready to make things official. But instead of getting the payoff fans deserved after 4 seasons, we got heartbreak and Margaret leaving town after dating him for literally 2 weeks. The series never properly established her academic ambitions as part of her character. Sure, there were hints about her leaving throughout season 4, but they were scattered and underdeveloped. Episodes like TGI Tuesday hinted at her departure when she says, "I'm not going anywhere," but never gave Margaret proper screen time to explain her dreams or make them feel important to her identity. The worst part about this whole situation is how it could have been handled so much better. Imagine if the writers had spent even 1 episode showing Margaret studying for entrance exams, talking about her future career goals, or struggling with the decision between love and education. Instead, they kept her motivations completely hidden until the moment she needed to dump Mordecai. When the breakup happened, it felt rushed and unearned because Margaret's educational goals were treated as plot devices rather than genuine character motivations. The setting of the breakup makes it even more brutal. They're literally in a life or death situation, hiding from gunfire, and Mordecai chooses this moment to be vulnerable and ask the most important question of their relationship. Margaret's rejection happens while they're both in physical danger, making the emotional trauma even worse. Even though pursuing education is obviously a valid choice, the way the show handled it made Margaret look thoughtless and cruel. She took Mordecai to meet her family, let her dad approve of him for the first time ever, built up his hopes and expectations, and then crushed him with news she'd been sitting on for who knows how long. Any reasonable person would have brought this up before letting things get so serious. The aftermath of this episode shows just how devastating this moment was for Mordecai. The season ends with him sitting on the roof, completely broken, while Rigby tries to comfort him with a soda. It's genuinely heartbreaking to watch, and it makes Margaret look even worse for causing this much pain through poor communication and terrible timing. One of Margaret's most damaging impacts was how she prevented Mordecai from growing as a character. Throughout regular show, we watched other characters evolve and become better people. Benson went from a seemingly tyrannical boss to someone who genuinely cared about his employees. Muscle Man developed from an obnoxious prankster into a loyal friend. Rigby learned responsibility and became more supportive of others. But Mordecai? His obsession with Margaret caused him to stagnate and even regress. Instead of learning from his romantic failures, he kept making the same errors in judgment over and over again. He never developed better communication skills, never learned to handle rejection maturely, and never figured out how to maintain healthy relationships. The pattern was always the same. Mordecai would get fixated on Margaret, make poor decisions because of his feelings, create drama for everyone around him, and then reset back to the same behavior in the next Margaret episode. By the end of the series, he hadn't grown as a person or learned anything meaningful from his experiences. Look at specific examples of Mordecai's regression. In early seasons, he shows maturity in episodes like Benson Be Gone, where he stands up for his boss, or Really Real Wrestling, where he supports Rigby's interests. But whenever Margaret appears, he becomes this obsessive, jealous mess who makes terrible decisions. In It's Time, Mordecai literally tries to kill Rigby because Rigby asked Margaret out first. Think about that. He attempted murder over a girl who barely knew he existed. This is character destruction. The Margaret episodes consistently brought out the worst in Mordecai and never allowed him to learn from these mistakes. This is especially frustrating because Mordecai had moments where he showed real potential for growth. Episodes that focused on his friendship with Rigby or his relationships with other park workers often showcased a more mature, caring side of his personality. But whenever Margaret entered the picture, he reverted to being an immature, obsessive mess. Margaret's influence also made Mordecai less likable as a protagonist. His constant pining and poor romantic choices became annoying rather than endearing. Fans started to lose sympathy for him because he kept creating his own problems and never seemed to learn from them. A main character who doesn't grow or change becomes boring and frustrating to watch. The contrast with other characters makes this even more obvious. While Mordecai was stuck in romantic loops with Margaret, Rigby was maturing, developing his relationship with Eileen and becoming a better friend. By the later seasons, Rigby often seemed more mature and responsible than Mordecai, which is saying something considering how Rigby started the series. Even worse, Margaret's influence on Mordecai created a ripple effect that hurt other relationships. His obsession with her often put strain on his friendship with Rigby, created awkwardness with other park workers, and prevented him from being a good friend when others needed support. Margaret actively made him a worse person. Margaret coming back in Merry Christmas, Mordecai marked the beginning of regular show's worst era. She returns for the holidays and immediately creates chaos by kissing Mordecai while he's dating CJ. Both of them are adults who should know better, but they get caught up in nostalgia and ruin everything. This kiss destroys 3 characters simultaneously. Mordecai becomes a cheater, betraying CJ's trust after she'd opened up to him and they'd built a genuine relationship. Margaret becomes a homewrecker, inserting herself into a relationship that was actually working well and making everyone miserable. And CJ gets her heart broken, transforming from a confident woman into someone dealing with betrayal and abandonment. The setup for this disaster is particularly frustrating. Margaret knows Mordecai is dating someone. CJ literally introduces herself as his girlfriend earlier in the episode. But instead of keeping appropriate boundaries, Margaret continues trying to reconnect with Mordecai throughout the party. She seeks him out for private conversations, brings up their past relationship, and creates the exact situation that leads to the kiss. What makes this even worse is that Margaret had been gone for an entire season. She chose to leave, pursued her education, and presumably moved on with her life. Coming back and immediately disrupting Mordecai's new relationship shows a level of selfishness that's hard to forgive. She had her chance with Mordecai and chose school instead. The aftermath gets even worse. In 1000th Chopper Flight Party, Margaret and Mordecai continue hanging out, which understandably drives CJ to transform into a storm cloud monster. The episode tries to frame CJ as overreacting, but she's responding completely normally to her boyfriend spending time with the woman he cheated with. Of course she's upset. Any reasonable person would be. Then, Not Great Double Date has Margaret hiring an actor to fake being her boyfriend instead of just being honest about the situation. When she can't bring herself to kiss the actor, she reveals she still has feelings for Mordecai. This admission comes after she'd already helped destroy his current relationship. Margaret's return actively makes everyone around her worse. The love triangle that dominates Season 6 represents everything wrong with Margaret as a character. She still has no clear personality or interest beyond wanting to be with Mordecai. Her entire motivation revolves around a relationship rather than any internal goals or desires. Meanwhile, CJ continues being a fully realized person who just wants honesty and respect from her boyfriend. Season 6 became widely considered regular show's weakest season, and Margaret's return is the primary reason why. The show that once thrived on episodic adventures and character growth became bogged down in relationship drama that made everyone involved look bad. While other characters were getting amazing development moments, the main characters were stuck in this toxic triangle that served no one. The resolution in Just Friends feels like a complete cop-out. After all the damage Margaret caused by returning, after destroying Mordecai's relationship with CJ, after creating season-long drama that hurt multiple characters, the conclusion is just, they decide to be friends. There's no real character growth, no acknowledgement of the pain caused, no satisfying resolution to any of the conflicts. This week ending proves that Margaret's storylines were ultimately pointless. If the writers couldn't even commit to a meaningful conclusion to her arc, why did they waste so much time on it in the first place? The whole Season 6 love triangle accomplished nothing except making fans hate Margaret and question Mordecai's judgment. Margaret represents everything regular show usually avoided: lazy character writing, reliance on tired romantic tropes, and prioritizing plot mechanics over genuine character development. In a series that consistently surprised viewers with creativity and heart, Margaret stood out as disappointingly conventional. Her failure becomes even more obvious when you consider how efficiently regular show could establish personalities for one-off characters. Random monsters, background workers, and single-episode villains often felt more real and interesting than Margaret, despite having minutes of screen time. The Capicola gang had more personality in one episode than Margaret developed in 6 seasons. The writers clearly realized their mistake with Margaret because they kept trying to fix her character in later seasons. Episodes like Local News Legend attempted to give her career ambitions and personality, but by then, it was too late. 6 seasons of underdevelopment can't be fixed with a few episodes about professional goals. The damage was already done. Margaret's character also highlights a frustrating double standard in the show's writing. Every male character, no matter how minor, got distinctive personality traits and memorable moments. Thomas, who was literally just an intern, had more defined characteristics than Margaret. But Margaret, who was supposed to be important enough to anchor major storylines, remained a cipher throughout the entire series. The series finale proves how little Margaret mattered to the overall story. Regular show ended with focus on friendship, sacrifice, and the bonds between the park crew. Margaret was basically an afterthought, which makes all the time spent on her storylines feel pointless and wasteful. If she wasn't important enough to matter in the show's conclusion, why did we spend years watching her drag down the quality? Looking at fan discussions about regular show, Margaret rarely comes up except in complaints. People talk about their favorite adventures, memorable villains, or emotional moments with other characters. But Margaret, she's mostly remembered for ruining good episodes and creating drama nobody wanted. That's not the legacy you want for a character who was supposed to be a major part of the show. The time and energy wasted on Margaret's underdeveloped storylines could have been used for so many better things. More adventures with the park crew, deeper exploration of the show's wild mythology, or character development for actually interesting people like Skips or Pops. Instead, we got seasons of romantic will they won't they with someone who brought nothing to the table. Margaret's negative impact extended beyond just her own storylines. By keeping Mordecai tied up in unsatisfying romantic drama, she prevented the show from exploring other aspects of his personality and relationships. Some of regular show's best episodes focused on Mordecai's friendship with Rigby or his interactions with other park employees. Margaret's presence often overshadowed these more interesting dynamics. What do you think about Margaret? Do you see something in her character that I'm missing? Or do you agree that she was a major weak point in an otherwise fantastic series? Margaret didn't just fail as a character. She actively damaged regular show's reputation and wasted years of potential storytelling. In a series celebrated for its creativity, heart, and memorable characters, Margaret stands as the biggest disappointment and the clearest example of how poor character writing can undermine even the best shows. She's not just regular show's worst character, she's genuinely the worst thing that ever happened to the series, and the show would have been infinitely better without her. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.